How do you guys define a leader?
Yeah. If I'll go ahead and go first. What I got from the textbook, and what I try to do is I try to think of different leaders that I've worked with throughout my career, and not only at work, but community or school. But what I saw, or what I got out of the textbook is what I believe that the qualities are, if there's a balance of the uh, different communication dimensions, which is the interpersonal, the task, and the change. So I really liked how they talked about the balance, and when I read that, I started thinking about some of the leaders that I've worked with in the past that pretty much had that balance of the interpersonal and the task and the change-oriented dimensions. I think those are really good qualities that make up a leader.
I'm going to totally piggyback off of that in the sense that I also agree. I was reading through and it was talking about, the difference between the leader and the manager's more detail-oriented, and the leader's kind of more big picture. And I think to be a good leader, you have to be in the center and have a good balance of that, that you have to understand the detail-oriented part of it, but also be able to have big picture as well. And you also have to look at things systematically as well as have interpersonal and emotional relationships with people.
I totally agree with that. I was looking at the project, how we have to interview a leader, right? And at first glance, I'm like, okay, like a leader, like is that a leader in an industry? Is that a leader in a racing, like anything, right? Like it's somebody you look up to, someone who does something well. And it was interesting because at first thought, I was like, well, I'll interview my dad, right? Because he's the leader in the industry that he's in scuba diving. And then I'm reading like the text last night and the days before, and I'm like looking at the difference between a manager and a leader and wondering if I'm making a decision based on what you guys are saying, like, and what the text said. Is a leader someone who's really good at something, or are they good at, as you guys are saying, the big picture? And I kind of actually rethought like the interview process, because one thing that really stood out to me, I was just pulling up my notes, was when they spoke about the leader as someone more than just managing tasks, right? So I was looking at like kind of my organization that started with 4 people, we're up to 23, and in the beginning it was about managing tasks to me, right? Like making sure that the work got done, and then it was starting to look at, well, how do we get to the next level, right? How do we get to this really, really big picture? But the thing that really stood out the most in that was how you do it. What kind of leader are you? There was I can't find my highlight for whatever reason on my iPad, but I was really, really honed in on the fact that a leader gives credit where credit is due and doesn't take credit for everything. It was something like that. And that's something that I really strive off in my own life after coming from a manager at Starbucks, sorry Sheila, who didn't have that philosophy, and then having one who did have that philosophy and really seeing the difference. And the text was kind of talking about that too, right? Like you learn how to be a leader from what you don't like in other leaders. You learn how to be a leader from the things you like and that you don't like. So I know that's a lot of pieces, but it was interesting to me how my definition changed from manager to a leader, and actually can see the difference, if that makes sense.
And I think on the task-oriented, and I read that and was thinking just about not just about, but it's more focused on like the communicating the goals, communicating the vision, and to me that's the big picture of the leader is communication. It's all about communication, is letting everybody in the organization or the group know what's our goals, what are we striving for, and I think with that it brings motivation out in people,
Yes, that's
direction and satisfaction, So I think to me that's part of the task part of it. I feel is maybe like the communication of the goals and the vision, and then where the change is, okay, innovation and areas of improvement, and what are we looking to be or do in 5 years. So
well, I love that you mentioned motivation, because I don't think a manager necessarily motivates on every occasion. But if you have a metric in a piece of paper that says you need to jump over this line 10 times, that's not necessarily being motivating. It's setting a goal, but it's not being motivating. Whereas a leader in the text, and kind of grasping my own understanding too, is you have to get them to want to jump 10 times. Right?
Yeah.
You have to get them to want to, and they have to know why, which then leads into that bigger picture, right? I think that's motivation and communication, very key. I agree with that.
I also think another point to talk about too is I really think a good leader sees strengths in people and helps them to kind of bolster that to benefit the whole. And a lot of experience that I've had, one person may be good at analytics and then another person may be good at like talking to people, and it's so you really play off those strengths to build a good team and to build kind of good like a whole group and really be able to empower those people and say, I recognize you for your talents and your strengths, and I really want to, can you contribute those to our group because of X, Y, and Z? But it's also recognizing, just kind of recognizing that people have these strengths and praising them and awarding them for that by letting them use it. So, and always encouraging them to do that. So.
Well, I think that's been like kind of like the biggest piece, like, and with my career of being developed as much as I have with Starbucks and like the leadership piece and manager, like when I first was like promoted, it was task oriented. Like I didn't build those relationships. It was like, okay, I have to, hit those goals, hit those sales comps, things like that, and not necessarily figure out how I was going to get there with my team and build that team. It was just like, I have to do this. Like I have my operational, my administration stuff to do every Monday, Tuesday I have this, So as I've grown and developed with the company to kind of see now where I started to where I now am in like a leadership role with my team, like we even, I am so attached to my team, like I, to the piece of like motivating them and developing them. Like I want to see them succeed no matter whether they're with Starbucks or like I have other partners right now as well doing ASU, but for like film and stuff like that, but still be that encouraging person to them no matter if they're going to leave me or not. And even to something I think it was like 2006, 2007, we did the actual Hershey Blanchard situational leadership with the grid. And we got little cards that like broke down, how to actually coach, how to work with our teams, because it is like you have to wear so many different hats, when you're working with a diverse group as they come in. You're not going to teach and coach and train one person hands-on if they're more of an audio listener, like visual learner, things like that, So I think some of these things that we're talking about, like versus that emotional piece, that task piece, and having the different, styles of training and learning is something that I get to experience like firsthand daily with my team. So,
Sheila, I really liked how you said you kind of wear all these different hats, and I think that that's something that a leader, that's something that's such an important component in a leader. Because I remember they were kind of talking in the book a little bit about like schemas and how everyone kind of has their own perceived reality, and as a leader, like it's kind of our role to tap into those realities and to use that, not necessarily in a negative way, but to use that to have them join on into the group and to really form kind of a new schema. And I think that that's awesome that you say that, because I love when people say that phrase, like I wear so many hats, because it's it just kind of shows that a great leader works with a multitude of different people and understands those people to bring them together. So
that's interesting. I finally found my highlights. I feel much better now. This iPad book thing is still freaking me out. But on that note, effective leaders are also skilled at sharing and responding to emotion. I think that's the piece that's different. One of the major pieces, kind of combining all the things that we've said, is that, and kind of Sheila, going off of what you said, the emotion isn't something I think we think about as a manager, right? It's get the work done.
Yeah.
And when we become a leader, or you decide to become a leader, or you're developing a leader, for example, my first hire after starting was a month after I started 2 years ago at my job. And that was the first person I hired, and ever since, that's the person I've been developing to take my job over. Okay, that's terrifying. What does that mean for me, right? Like, where am I going to go? And what's been interesting is walking her through this journey of development and understanding that, Raina, like, we're going to build these levels, and it's not the fact that I want all the reward. I want my success is seeing you succeed.
Yeah.
Seeing you be able to lead in a way that maybe I contributed to, maybe I didn't. Maybe you learned what you did and didn't like. But I think a leader, and the question was kind of asking about like good leaders and poor leaders, right? I had a leader at Starbucks who made it very clear that her goal was to ensure that she looked good. That our work made her look good, which is okay, but at what point in time is credit due where credit's due, right? At what point? So one thing I noted that I'm remembering now from my discussion post was the fact that my job wouldn't be as good. I wouldn't be as good as I could be if I didn't have the ideas of every single person on my team, right? And there's times where it challenges. We had a new hire where it's, hey, I need this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like no one on our team's ever demanded that hard, and it makes you better, right? It makes you want to grow. And so watching, her name is Raina, go through this development stage where there's uneasy discomfort, and teaching her to cater to different emotions on our team, new hires and demands and these types of things, is watching her go from a manager to a leader is really, 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 really fun. Kind of what you were saying, Sheila, right? Where you can see that change. And I love that you can say you can sit back and reflect what that looks like, right? Because it is a big, huge cognitive, emotional growth and development that is something that can be really fun, or it can be really scary, or it can be both, right? So I think that's really cool. Like, but I think a huge part in leadership is understanding emotions. And going back to what I was saying about trying to pick a leader, and we'll pick on my dad since he's not here, but that's one thing that me and him work on in our relationship that I see him do better at work, right? Is that emotional piece. So I wonder sometimes too, the cross between leadership in all areas of our life and not just an organization. So, sorry.
And going back to you had mentioned about the growth, and I think that's important too, as far as being interested and concerned with the followers, that they have the tools and they're learning and they're growing, and I think that's huge, to be able to do that for whether it's employees, followers, group members, just given the opportunity to learn and to grow and to expand. And that's what I enjoyed when I had managed previously, is just being able to, and giving them the opportunity to speak your mind, give some feedback, because it's better to, like you said, get feedback from everybody instead of just one. Yeah, your feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
Your way or no way. Yeah.
How do you grow if it's just you? Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. You were just making me think. I never really thought of the word followers, right? And reading the text, and there's been a couple other classes that have brought up that word, but like, what a great responsibility that comes with that term, follower, right?
Have you ever seen, there's like a video of like this guy, I don't know if you've seen it, it's like a guy like dancing in the park, and he literally just gets up and randomly like starts dancing, no music whatsoever, and then like 3 minutes into the video, another guy comes up and like starts dancing with him. And then like right after that, it's like another person, and I'll send you guys the link. It's like another person, and then by the end of the video, like 10 minutes into like dancing, it's like this crowd of people just dancing in a park, and it like wasn't planned, it wasn't doing anything, and just like this guy got up and started dancing, and so it's like followers have such a huge impact. So
it's true. It makes it a bigger thing, right? And I never look, like when I wake up every morning, I'm not like, today I'm going to direct my followers, right? Like, I don't wake up and be that. I'm like, hey, my team members are here, my friends are here, my group is here, we're ready to face the day. But when I think of the term followers in relationship and difference between a team member, it's, for me, that would bring does bring a huge responsibility, right? Like, if someone's following the way that you act, then hopefully you're demonstrating the way that you would like them to act, right? So that's interesting for your story too, right? And dancing, like, obviously there's nothing wrong with that. And they followed for the sheer act that there was someone to follow.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I just think that's interesting.
I'll send it to you. It's a really cool video. So.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Yeah. I also know that we were instructed to also talk about like bad leaders.
Thank you.
Because I just know that time, we're like how much watching the time. So like, what are your what is everyone's experience with bad leaders? What makes a bad leader, etc.?
no communication,
Yeah.
lack of communication.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
You're supposed to
important.
follow.
Just let people know what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's, you know, and it could be any communication, whether it's verbal or, I mean, just, you know, just something. But I think that for me and the experience that I have had with poor leaders is just, you know, there has to be some time. I've experienced good and bad. And good, I experienced, you know, communication, what the company's, how the company's doing, where are we, what is our initiatives, what is our focus, what is our goals, and then I experienced the other side where there was like nothing. It's like you're just there and you're just doing your job, but you know, so for me it was like I experienced a little bit of both, of being able to know what's going on and what's our driver here, and you know, what are the motivation and the growth and whatnot. And so but when there's no communication, then nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and what's there to motivate you, right? I would definitely agree with communication being huge. The thing that I would add to that too is promises and deliverables, right? Like two very different things. One thing that I've struggled with leaders before, again, communication, but making promises that you can't deliver on, right? So there's a good comfort level for transparency, I think, but I also think there's a point where you're still kind of falling in line for a structure, right? And one thing that I've definitely struggled with was, hey, you're gonna get this, and I'm still young, so I'm still learning like what that means in the corporate world and the other world, but the piece of one thing that I focus on as a leader is my discomfort with not being able to deliver. So making sure that what I choose to say has the ability to function in something that could turn into something, but also being real if it can't, right? Hey, this is what my dream is. Like this, like I tell my team every single day, here's your wish list. Fill it in. Dream big. Think about what you want. I may not be able to get it for you, but maybe I can, right? Like maybe I can get you another button in the system that would make your life easier, right? So deliverables is one thing with the promises, and that's not always, I'm learning obviously, is not something always that your boss can control, right? There's always usually another level that's pulling those strings too, right? The other piece for me is I'm a giver, and so one thing that I struggled with some bosses is selfishness, right? In that sense of, I wouldn't even say it's favoritism or anything. It would be the fact that they cared more about themselves and them looking good than about developing the people under them. And I know that's two very different leadership principles. Like I'm aware that like some leaders are there to just get to their end goal, and maybe some leaders are there to develop. But one thing that was hard for me is it's hard to follow when your boss's goal is themselves. And able to follow for me is looking up to the person and wanting to be more like them or learn how to modify different things, right? So I don't know if that came out right, but my main point is that when I'm looking up to somebody who looks down and says, great, well that gave me 10 more points, like I'm glad that helped. Like
I also think when like a leader, like a boss, like doesn't really acknowledge the effort that you put into it. So my mom always gives me the example of, she was a freelance writer. She's been a freelance writer for a long time. She's dabbling in a lot of different things right now. But her first job right out of college, she had this boss, and my mom's an awesome writer, and so and she would write, I think it was a newspaper or an article or something, but the boss would literally turn down like everything that she brought in, and it wasn't even, it wasn't even like a I don't like you and I like other people. It was just that there was no facilitation of encouragement and motivation within the other person, in the sense that they weren't playing off their strengths. They weren't empowering the other person, saying, that's great, maybe let's look at something different, or this is a really good article, let's publish it, and completely just shutting it down. And so that's always an example that she tells me about, and I think that goes into bad leadership in the sense of not really seeing the other person for who they are and what they're trying to contribute, and kind of being closed-minded and not offering good constructive criticism.
In feedback, right? Like the cycle of communication, right? Like how can you know how to better if there's no return value. Not
Yeah,
necessarily that
exactly.
it becomes approved every time, but how are you supposed to get the next one approved if you don't know why it was?
Exactly.
I think it's like having them support you too, you know, like if you have a leader that's not necessarily supportive of your decisions, or, you know, as, you know, to what your mom, you know, gets shot down a lot or just get that negative criticism, like you get like closed door, like you never want to go talk to them. You
Yeah.
can't
Exactly.
talk to them because you feel like anything you're going to mention is just going to be shot down, and then it's a why bother, I'm not good at my job, and you start doubting yourself in so many different ways when your leader isn't supportive and you know isn't there to help you grow.
Yeah.
You know, there's something you talked about earlier, like actually it was like my last class about psychological contracts. Like, so if you're making promises and you're not keeping them, you're losing your team, and then they start like distrusting you because you say you're going to do one thing and you don't, and you're not transparent with them to say, I can't, you know, succeed this right now because of this, you know, what's going on. But that was something I learned actually in my last course that I took.
So it does mean something.
It really does. And I didn't think about that a couple times, like where I've let down my team because I was like, oh yeah, I will do that, you know, and then something just like new, you know, promo rolled out or something else happened where I got a new district manager. So then I had to like start, you know, getting used to my new leader, and totally forgot about my own team, and so then I lost that contract that they had in their mind, and I didn't even like, think about that. So
I love that term contract.
yeah,
I never thought of it like that.
I when I read it last term, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, this makes total sense. Like I've dealt with that. I've actually been the one that broke the contract, you know. So it's like, so I've even been a bad leader at times too because of that.
I actually have a thing like taped to my computer that says "Do what you say you're gonna do."
Mhm.
Like it's taped right there every morning. I'm like, okay, I will. I got it.